Jakarta is drowning. Not in some far-off future. Right now. Parts of the city have sunk 13 feet in the last 40 years, and by 2050, 1/3 of it will be underwater. So Indonesia did something no country has ever tried at this scale. They are building an entire new capital from scratch, deep inside the Borneo rainforest, for $35 billion. It is called Nusantara. But the further construction gets, the more one question becomes impossible to ignore. Is this the most ambitious rescue mission in modern history, or the most expensive ghost city ever built? Here is the basic story. Indonesia has 280 million people spread across 17,000 islands. And for the last 75 years, the entire country has been run from one city, Jakarta. Jakarta is not just Indonesia's capital. It is also the most populated city on Earth, with over 32 million people packed into its metro area. The traffic is legendary. The air pollution regularly reaches hazardous levels. And the whole city is built on a swampy river delta. Which brings us to the real problem. Jakarta is literally sinking faster than any major city in the world. In some northern districts, the ground drops 10 inches every single year. Houses disappear. Seawalls overflow. Entire neighborhoods are already below sea level, held back only by aging barriers. The cause is a brutal combination. Millions of people drilling private wells pump groundwater out faster than rain can replace it, and the city compacts down into the hollow space. Meanwhile, rising sea levels from climate change push the ocean in from the other side. By 2050, scientists estimate that large parts of Jakarta will be permanently underwater. This is not a maybe. It is happening on a visible timeline. So in 2019, then-President Joko Widodo announced something that sounded like a movie plot. Indonesia would build a completely new capital, 800 miles away, on the island of Borneo, a place called Nusantara. The vision was wild. A smart forest city powered entirely by renewables. Carbon neutral by 2045, everything within a 10-minute walk or bike ride. Wildlife corridors running through the center. No private cars allowed in the core. Over 1.9 million people living there by mid-century. And the price tag? $35 billion. Funded mostly by private investors, with the government covering the core government buildings. That is the pitch. That is what the whole world got excited about. But this is where the simple story ends, because the real version is a lot more complicated. So what does building a capital city from scratch actually look like? In 2022, bulldozers rolled into a remote stretch of East Kalimantan, Borneo. The site covered 256,000 hectares. That's bigger than the entire city of London. Except there was nothing there. No roads, no power grid, no water system, no workforce. Just dense tropical rainforest, orangutans, and a handful of indigenous villages. The first phase was brutal. Engineers had to carve a 2-hour access road from the coastal city of Balikpapan just to get materials in. Then, they had to build temporary housing for tens of thousands of construction workers before they could build anything permanent. The centerpiece is the Garuda Palace, a presidential complex shaped like Indonesia's national symbol, with wings spreading 100 meters across. It is the first completed landmark in Nusantara, and it is genuinely stunning. When the sun hits it, the metal feathers look like they are rippling in the wind. But here's where the engineering gets serious. The planners are trying to solve problems no city has ever solved at once. The entire grid is designed to run on renewables by 2045. Every building has to meet strict green standards. Autonomous electric buses are supposed to replace cars. AI systems are meant to manage water, waste, and energy in real time. Meanwhile, the master plan claims Nusantara will preserve the surrounding forest. Architects designed wildlife bridges so orangutans and sun bears can cross through the city without leaving the canopy. On paper, it is a model for how every future city should be built. And physically, it is actually happening. The vice presidential palace was completed in January 2026. The core government district is nearly done. Ministry buildings are going up. A hospital, schools, apartment blocks for civil servants. But this is where reality starts catching up with the pitch. The core city currently has about 10,000 people in it. The broader metro has 150,000, and most of them are construction workers or people from villages that existed before Nusantara did. The original plan was to move 1.2 million residents here by 2029. At the current pace, that looks impossible. The government is now talking about moving just 4,100 civil servants in 2026. That is not a city. That is a small office park. So why is the build slowing down? And who actually stopped believing in the vision? To understand why Nusantara is in trouble, you have to understand who was supposed to pay for it. The original plan was genius on paper. The Indonesian government would only cover about 20% of the cost, roughly $7 billion, mostly for the government buildings. The remaining 80%, around $28 billion, would come from private investors, sovereign wealth funds, tech giants, infrastructure billionaires. For a while, the big names lined up. SoftBank pledged $40 billion. Investors from the United Arab Emirates, China, and South Korea signed letters of intent. Then SoftBank pulled out in 2022, citing other priorities. Other investors quietly followed. By the time Jokowi left office in October 2024, the private investment gap was massive, and the government was covering more of the tab than anyone planned. Then, Prabowo Subianto took over. And this is where geopolitics gets interesting. Prabowo never publicly opposed Nusantara, but he has quietly done three things that tell the real story. First, the funding. State money for Nusantara has collapsed. In 2024, the budget was $2 billion. In 2025, it dropped to $700 million. In 2026, it is just $300 million. That is an 85% cut in 2 years. Second, the language. Prabowo signed a presidential regulation quietly renaming Nusantara's status. It is no longer designated as Indonesia's national capital. It is now called the political capital. That shift confused policy experts, because a political capital is essentially just where the government sits. A national capital is the beating heart of a country. Those are very different ambitions. Third, the symbolism. Prabowo did not visit the Nusantara construction site for over a year after becoming president. His first visit was in January 2026. He stayed one night. He told reporters his presence showed commitment. Then he returned to Jakarta. So what is actually going on here? Indonesia is caught between two crises. One, Jakarta is objectively dying, sinking, drowning, polluted, gridlocked. Leaving it as the capital indefinitely is not an option. 2. Nusantara costs real money that Indonesia does not have, especially after a weakening rupiah and global investors losing confidence in emerging market megaprojects. And there is a geopolitical angle nobody talks about. Nusantara sits on Borneo, right next to the Malacca Strait and the South China Sea. That is the most important shipping corridor on Earth. Moving Indonesia's political center there pulls the country's gravity away from crowded Java and toward the strategic heart of Southeast Asia. For China, a fully built Nusantara would be a major ASEAN power move. For the US, it is a shift in regional balance. This is why early investors from multiple superpowers got involved, and why their pullback matters beyond just money. There's also a cost nobody on Earth can ignore. The environmental damage is already happening. Mangrove forests around Balikpapan Bay have been cleared. The Owa Kalimantan, a critically endangered primate species, is losing habitat. Indigenous communities like the Balik people are being pushed off land they have lived on for centuries. Environmental groups like Walhi call them silent victims. the mangrove ecosystem, the proboscis monkey, the Owa Kalimantan. Creatures and communities that cannot lobby, cannot sue, cannot vote. So Indonesia has already paid the environmental cost. The forest is cleared. The communities are displaced. The Garuda Palace is built. But the money is drying up, and the big vision is shrinking fast. That sets up the twist that most coverage of Nusantara completely misses. Here's what almost nobody is telling you about Nusantara. The question isn't whether it gets built. Parts of it are already built. The real question is what kind of city it becomes. Because there are now 3 possible futures, and Indonesia is quietly betting on the least ambitious one. Future 1. The full vision. A real capital of 1.9 million people by 2045. Carbon neutral, with a thriving economy. A tech hub of Southeast Asia. To get here, Indonesia needs a surge of private investment that has not materialized. As of 2026, this path is fading fast. Future 2. A ghost city. The buildings are there. The roads are there. But investors stay away. Civil servants resist the move, and Jakarta never actually cedes power. Nusantara becomes a monument to one president's vision that nobody else wanted. Empty skyscrapers, abandoned apartment blocks, construction halted mid-build. This is what critics warn is already happening. The 85% budget cut. The language shift from national to political capital. The fact that Parliament might not actually convene there by 2028. All signs point here. Future 3. This is the one nobody's naming out loud. A political compromise capital. A place where Indonesia's president and a handful of ministries are formally based. Maybe a few thousand civil servants. Just enough to say it's the capital on paper. But Jakarta keeps running everything important. Business, culture, media, finance, all still there. Nusantara becomes like Putrajaya in Malaysia. Administrative, hollow, symbolic. This is probably what Prabowo is actually building toward. Not a failure, but not the dream either. A scaled-down capital that's just enough to meet the 2028 political deadline, while Jakarta continues to drown slowly in the background. Which raises the question that should keep every Indonesian policymaker awake at night. If Nusantara becomes a political outpost instead of a real capital, what happens to the 32 million people still living in Jakarta when the water rises? Nusantara was never just about moving a government. It was supposed to be a safety valve, a place for climate migrants from Java to eventually go. A proof of concept that humanity can build sustainable cities on demand. A signal to the world that developing nations can leapfrog broken infrastructure instead of patching it. If Nusantara shrinks to a symbolic capital, all of that vanishes. Jakarta keeps sinking. The private sector keeps building where the money is. And the 21st century's biggest planned climate retreat becomes a cautionary tale instead of a blueprint. Here is the part that makes this story so strange. Nusantara might still technically succeed. The buildings will stand. A president will live there. Parliament might even convene. And on every metric governments use to measure success, Indonesia can claim they built the city they promised. But the vision that got the world excited, carbon neutral, forest integrated, tech-powered, million-person metropolis of the future, that version of Nusantara may never exist. Not because it was impossible, but because when the bills came due, nobody wanted to pay them except the people who cannot say no. The mangroves, the orangutans, the indigenous villages, and the 10 million Jakartans whose homes will eventually be under the sea. That is the real story of Nusantara. Not a bold rescue mission, not a ghost city. Something weirder, a half-built answer to a question the world has not figured out how to ask yet. Indonesia is trying to do something no country has done before. Move 10 million people ahead of a slow-motion climate disaster by building a new capital from scratch. They have poured $35 billion, leveled parts of a rainforest, and displaced communities that have been there for generations. And right now, in April 2026, it is still unclear whether the world is watching a historic success or a historic failure. The next 24 months will decide which story this becomes. If you want to see which megaprojects actually shape the next century and which ones collapse into cautionary tales, subscribe. Because the story of how we build the future is happening in real time, and most of the world isn't paying attention.